The AEW show from Wednesday night, December 15th, with the long-awaited championship match with Page and Danielson. And I got to admit, starting off at the top, I'm like, what are they going to do here? I didn't think that anybody could do an hour with Adam Page at this point in his career and at this point in the wrestling business like that, and it would be good. And son of a gun, they did it. And because we had talked about, is it too early to put the belt on Danielson? Well, obviously, because Page just won it. It would bury him. But at the same time, Danielson didn't need to be doing no jobs, as Ernie Ladd might have said one time. And they don't do DQs because there are no rules in this fucking company except the ones that the individual wrestlers having the match impose on themselves. So, but no, it's true, right?
It's true. No, it is true. It is true.
So,
funny.
I was wondering, what the fuck are they going to do? They did it. It was perfect. And it was obviously this was a Bryan Danielson production. I'm sure that Adam Page had every bit of input in the world, and they sat down and talked about it, and Danielson was receptive and easy to work with, but he was the director of this major motion picture. And I can't see how anybody could argue with that when you take a guy with 20 years experience wrestling all over the world against every major talent in every major style, or young Adam Page, fiery babyface, who was in Ring of Honor and the Independents 3 years ago. So Bryan Danielson ran this, but as a result, it was the best match that Adam Page has ever had, by far. Because it takes two, and you got to have a leader in the dance routine. I like that they started out with it because even though a lot of people are saying it was true, nobody else could follow it on the show, and the crowd was worn out. At least this way they could go. If they had started at 9 o'clock, people would have gone, oh, they're going an hour right off the bat, right? It would have been kind of a tell. You didn't really know for sure until on this one, until they passed, the 30 or 35-minute mark. And then you're like, oh, okay, I think I see what they're doing.
Yeah, there were really only two options. You could start the show with it, or you could do what Watts used to do and start with one or two matches and then have that and announce throughout the whole show. We have standby matches. But, they've never really done that. So you'd have to establish that as a regular thing, which they could do. But other than that, you had to start the show with it.
But anyway, as you mentioned earlier in the program, the Cult of Meat with Extra Cheese sign guy in the Cornette face shirt was on one corner, and the Cornette is out of touch sign guy was on the other corner. And I kept thinking by the time the fucking match is over with, they got to be on each other in the crowd, but they stayed calm. I mean, we'll go through a little bit of the match. It was a 60-minute match, so we're not going to recap everything, but just this was wrestling. And now you see Bryan Danielson, he was forced to retire because of concussions, but yet he can put together and execute something like this. I'm not even talking about athletically. I'm talking about mentally, the brain power. So that now we know why he wanted to come back to wrestling and why he felt that he could wrestle. This guy don't have brain damage that's going to hinder him from doing anything as long as he's careful in the ring. But he's a smart-ass heel, like you said, the World of Sport heel, where he's a technical wrestler, but at the same time he's a little prick, a bell end, a wanker, if you will. He does the little things to get heat. He's smirky. He leans out for the rope breaks, but not even rushing like I'm scared, but I'm a smart-ass and I'm just going to get you away from me. Doing the jumping jacks, mocking Page, controlling the pace of the match. Paul Turner, the referee, actually got a chance to referee. I haven't seen Paul Turner used to work for us in Ring of Honor. I like the guy. He's a great guy, a great referee. He's not been a referee for the last 2 years because nobody pays any attention to the referees because, as I mentioned, everybody makes up their own rules. So it was unusual in AEW. You would see this was a sporting contest, a contest for a championship with a legitimate official in there. Imagine that. I wish JR could have been there to call this one. I think it would have brought the old JR out. And for the first longest part of the match, which was smart, every time Page would start to open up, Danielson would give him a little something and then ground him. And that way it's safe by the end of the match. Danielson had not had most of the shit kicked out of him still, and that's why there was a place to go. Page sold well through this whole thing. Everything looked good. Nothing was rushed. This was different than almost every AEW match, which was a positive thing here. Everything made sense. Everything meant something. They gave time for it to register. Again, Danielson kept shutting Page down because he knew they were going long. And I mean, that's Twinkle Toes' specialty, is to do everything he fucking knows in the first 15 minutes of a 35-minute match, so you can't wait for it to be over with. This went 30 minutes, and I wasn't even remotely tired of watching it. They went to the first break at 20 minutes in. It seemed like the first 5 or 10 minutes. Page, it looked like he had time to sell, so it looked like shit was having an effect on him. And you could say, and Page really, he was a wrestler here rather than a spot guy. And the two things that they did that I will find fault with, and otherwise what was tremendous, was Page did that blind moonsault off the top rope again. I say the blind moonsault because he turns his back on his opponent, climbs up, and just flips. And you could see by the camera angle when he's coming down, Bryan Danielson obviously, instead of just stepping to the side, reaches up and catches him. And in all the other matches, that wouldn't be a big deal because they're all fucking horseshit anyway, and you can tell. But with what they were doing here, that there was no obvious buzz killers and see-throughs, that's the kind of thing. They didn't need to do it. Page doesn't need to do that fucking thing every match, and sooner or later, it's going to bite him in the ass. And the only other thing, it was later on in the match, but same principle, is these guys cannot do superplexes or anything off the top rope by standing on the second rope. They have to get both feet of both guys on the top rope. And that's another buzzkill, because that requires obvious visual cooperation just in terms of not trying to get away. And nobody can keep their balance when they're both on the top rope, except if the other guy's helping. Just the second rope makes all the difference, because if anybody's never been in a ring, if you get your feet on the second rope and you brace your knees on that top rope and you've got your stance, you can fucking pick people up and do shit and not fall over. But on the top rope, no, you're helping each other and it's obvious. Anyway, that's my soapbox. However, by 30 minutes in, Page was getting a little bit more before he'd get shut back down. And, you know, it was still building. They still had room to run. Then at one point after, it was right before the second break, Page went for another moonsault off onto Danielson on the floor, but this time Danielson shoved him off and he bumped off the apron. Jesus Christ, which that's trusting your own eyesight. He did a front flip off the top rope and landed back first on that apron that's 1.5 feet wide. And then Danielson posted him a few times and went in and healed the crowd while Page got some color. And now we're halfway in, just going for the second break. And did you see the spot when they came back? Danielson runs down the apron of the ring and jumps off and gives the knee to Page as he's standing on the floor.
Yeah.
And then got on top of him and punched him in the head because Page was bleeding. Anybody wants to know what I'm talking about when I've been screaming about why are all these guys throwing these phony punches and why are all these fucking idiots covering up so you can't hit them anyway? It looks like shit. This is what it's supposed to look like. Page didn't cover his head up because it's bleeding, and Danielson's trying to punch him in the cut, and Danielson's punches were going straight to his fucking forehead. That's the way you do it. And then Danielson starts getting more vicious in the heat. He's wrapping Page's arm around the post. He's working on the cut. He does the head punches, the 10 punches in the corner. He only gave him 9, as I recall, because he didn't want to make the people happy. And the punches to the head in the corner looked good. I refer you from that spot then to later on in this show when Dante Martin was punching in the vicinity of MJF's head. Fuck. So Page is selling like a champ. And fucking Danielson's a heel. And this thing is building still at 40 minutes in. It's still building. This is what Kenny Omega is incapable of. An athletic contest with professional wrestling and not phony video game bullshit and a lack of logic. That's why he's not the best wrestler in the world, never will be, never has been. And that's why guys like Danielson have a fucking claim to being in that conversation. He's doing what Twinkletoe's been there for 2 years and not been able to do. Danielson goes for a kick to Page on the apron. Page ducks it, and Danielson kicks the post, and Page is back in control. And now we go to another break. We're 40 minutes in. And here's a comparison that Ric Flair might not agree with, but I compared Flair and Steamboat in 1989 to, it was a match, it was as far as you could go in wrestling to be entertaining while still keeping the believability of an athletic contest. That was the state of the art at that time. And then later on, when I saw Tyler Black and Davey Richards in Toronto, and they had that magic night, I said, okay, this is a little bit updated. It's still an athletic contest and a struggle, but it's entertaining. This is the kind of thing that it's about as far as you can go. If they'd gone any farther with the entertainment, it would have taken you out of the match as an athletic contest, but they still managed to retain the spirit of they were fighting over something. So I compare this to the flavor of Flair and Steamboat. Page hit a tombstone, got a big pop on a 2 count, and then they rolled over and started selling so the people could chant, "This is awesome." You notice the people never chant, "This is awesome" in the middle of the action. That's like they don't clap at a tennis match when people are still hitting the ball back and forth. They wait till somebody misses. So if you're constantly in motion, you're running off and leaving your fucking crowd. And they fought on the top buckle again, but finally big belly to back off the top. Danielson still all over Page. Page's juice dried up. He should have committed a little bit more, possibly. It would have added here, but nevertheless, it's all right. By the way, when we were talking about Slow Devin and his spike stabbing the other day, I mentioned the way to blade yourself, not like what that poor referee did by trying to go from coast to coast from one side of your head to the other and only scratching it like a fingernail. The idea is you make your blade, stick it in, and drag it about a half an inch or an inch, commit, boom, and you're done. Some idiot thought that I said stick the blade in about a half an inch or an inch. Is well, Cornette's crazy. Well, your skull. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Stick it in your skin and pull it about a half an inch or an inch across. Dumb shit. Anyway. So then Page finally, he hit that dead eye on the apron, and it was, Danielson's had the concussion issues. This was safe. Safe as far as his head hitting, safe as far as just the margin of error on the apron. Still, I don't know why they do that stuff. But then Page went for just a leap, not even a dive, but just came up to the top and went to jump off, maybe for a double sledge or whatever, off the top to the floor on Danielson. And Danielson sidestepped him, and Page went face first through the table, and that looked great. And they go to the break there because everybody's down. When they come back, Page is still fighting from underneath, but now both guys are showing the effects. And Danielson goes for another top rope belly to back, but Page landed on his feet and clotheslined Danielson a fucking flip, and they go into the 1-2 forearm exchange, but it wasn't the stupid, I'll let you hit me and then you let me hit you. And it wasn't the little flipper forearms that nobody sold. They were staggering back and forth across the ring with each blow. And at this point, and tell me if you heard this, Taz referred to Justin Roberts calling 5 minutes remaining in the match on the PA system. I never heard it. Did they not have the PA piped through to program audio?
This has happened almost every single time they've done this. And they did this, in fact, previously during the Omega Danielson 30-minute time limit draw. They do, in fact, announce it to the building, but it doesn't come through. The only way you would know it, actually, is if you listen and hear the crowd all of a sudden get quiet to hear what's being said.
So, and then the announcers referred to it, but the 5-minute call was the first one that we'd heard. There 5 minutes left, so they went 55 minutes not calling any time. And then they wonder why, why the people live, I heard a lot of people saying this, arguing on Twitter and on the internet. Well, did they screw the fans by giving them a draw and a title match? You fucking morons. It's been so long since this shit was done right that the fans don't even know what the fuck's going on. For one thing, it's free TV, and for another thing, a draw in a world championship match, fucking the fans. Well, if they had never fucked the fans before, we wouldn't have drawn very much money for 100 years. But the reason why the fans live were mad, one of them is because they watched this thing go on so long and then suddenly 5 minutes left. If you make the 5-minute calls, they're in the moment and they're apprised of what's going on, and it builds the tension. Like the wrestlers were building the tension in the ring. The 5 minutes gone, 55 minutes remaining, and then 10 minutes gone, and 15 and 20, and the clock is ticking. It adds to the tension. But when you just tell the fans in the building, there's 5 minutes left, and then ding, yeah, they're going to be pissed. And also, there's 5,000 people in the building. There's 1 million watching on television. And yes, they've been talking about how they've been going past 30 minutes and past 40 minutes. But they could have had a clock ready. Or they could have piped the ring announcer audio into the program mix so that the fans at home would have been kept apprised. They're so scared of time limit draws, like these weren't done regularly all through the history of wrestling. Anyway, so Paige hits a surprise deadeye out of nowhere. It gets a big pop on a 2 count, but there were no overdone finishers. There were no preposterous moves. Everybody sold the effects of everything. And then finally now Paige is really coming on in the last few minutes. This is what the people been waiting for. And he even did Danielson's stomp spot where he grabs the wrists and stomps the face, and not as good as Danielson, but he doesn't have as much practice. And then he goes for the buckshot, but Danielson gets the label lock. But Paige escapes and hits a clothesline that turns Danielson inside out and is ready for the buckshot and flips in and hits the buckshot lariat. And as soon as they went down, the bell rang and the people started booing, but they didn't have the bell mic'd either. You could barely hear it. So the announcers had to say, oh, the time's expired. And why did they hit the bell on the buckshot lariat instead of the cover after the buckshot lariat? Has anybody ever watched wrestling before? You don't fucking ring the bell when the babyface just hammered the fucking guy. You wait for the babyface to crawl over as quick as he can and try to capitalize, and as soon as he hooks the leg, one, ding, 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 ding. So they need to work on their ambient sound, miking the bell, bringing the announcer into the ring announcer into the fucking program mix, and learn how to complement the incredible work that the talent in the ring, Adam Page and Bryan Danielson, did by giving them their atmosphere for the hour Broadway. Shivani's seen them. Probably nobody else in the building has. But they could do some research. But what a fucking match. That's the best AEW heavyweight championship match they've ever had, right?
I think so.
Can we think of another one?
I thought it was tremendous. I think Bryan Danielson right now is one of the most enjoyable wrestlers to watch of anyone in recent memory. And I was one of those people that for a long time thought, oh, if only AEW had CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, that would be a big match they could do. And it would be great to see them in that forum where they're not handcuffed by Vince McMahon. And both guys have gone in different ways than I thought they would. And both guys have been great. And it's just so enjoyable and everything's fresh. This match was great. World of Sport style. I mean, that's what it is. You go watch an old World of Sport match where they're doing stuff and everyone's paying attention. Everyone's into the match. Everyone knows what's going on. He is so good right now. Really love this match. Not to take anything away from Paige, but to me, this felt like the Bryan Danielson show more than anything else.
Well, and he's trying to prove a point. I'm sure he read Flair's comments, but also this is what he came to the company to do, to be the best wrestler in the world, to prove a point, to do what he enjoys after he was kept down, then forced to retire and blah, 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 and all that shit he went through.
And now you have an interesting storyline because Bryan Danielson has not been able to defeat the AEW champion, but on 2 different occasions, the AEW champion, Omega and now Paige, have been unable to beat Bryan Danielson.
It's almost like Sam Muchnick's behind this. Because it's so old, it's new. It's so simple, it's intricate. It's so easy, it's complicated. This is wrestling. And again, the best match that Adam Page has ever had. And after every time I see what this kid can do, I'm pissed off that I haven't got to see it before. He came out and did that great interview where he sounded like a top babyface, had some balls. Only 2 years into the television program. He has this, after all the rotten tag team matches that we had to watch him in with Harpo as his partner and the stinky multi-man gimmick matches, he was in one of those football field fuckery things. After the Dork Order bullshit where we had to see him palling around with job guys and riding them around on his lawnmower, finally, he can do this. Who could have known? But, and that's why, if Paige, I know they didn't have Danielson for him to work with, but if Paige had been concentrated on as a single from the start, allowed to talk and wrestle singles matches against some kind of experienced opponents, imagine how much farther along he'd be right now instead of working with all this indie-rific mud show horse shit.
And I want to say also, this is exactly the kind of wrestling I want. Sports-based wrestling, where it's not too sports-based, so there's no charisma or personality, but this. Yes. This right here, and I've said it before, the best stuff in AEW is the best stuff in wrestling in years, and the worst stuff is unwatchable garbage. And the biggest problem with AEW in my eyes is you follow up perfection like this with the next. I couldn't believe they followed. I couldn't believe they followed the match with that promo, and it immediately turned me off to the show. But let's get your thoughts.
Well, wait a minute. Oh shit. I forgot. That was the one where the Hardley Boys and Adam Cole were talking, right?
And Bobby Fish.
And Bobby, yeah, I skipped that.
And it was Christmas music in the background. And
was there? I didn't even see any. I just saw their faces. I said, "Fuck it, it's just a pre-tape. I'm not going to ruin my mood." How bad was it?
It was all their usual comedy, and I'm sure to them it was funny, and to me it was, how do you follow? Again, AEW has segments and matches and guys that are serious and great, and it's Mid-South Wrestling 2022. And then there's this, which is fucking Kai and Tai 2022. It's not good, it's bad comedy, and it takes me out of the show when you follow a serious tone with the complete opposite.
And you know what? Watching the Hardleys or Cutlet or all of their stooge crew, and now, unfortunately, poor Adam Cole, who's, I guess, irredeemable at this point. It's like people that show you pictures of their ugly children. They think they're beautiful, but nobody else wants to look at them. That's what their promos are like. They think they're hilarious, but nobody else wants to see that shit because they've fucking puked on themselves, they've shit their pants, and they got snot hanging out of their nose. But I'll tell you what we need with wrestling, like you said, sports-based presentation. That's what we were promised. That's what we got with Danielson and Page. Brian, there was some meat to that, something you could take a bite of, you could chew on, something with substance, something with taste, something that you would crave. There was meat to Page and Danielson, and all the other guys is just bones and cartilage, and that's something you're never going to get with our friends at Omaha Steaks. Folks,
Amazing.
It's the holidays.
What an amazing transition.
It's the holidays. And I'll tell you what, you may be wondering what to get people. Well, there's one thing that's a universally common amongst all the peoples in the world. All the little chillins in the world has to eat at one point or another. Some of us eat more than others, but all of us have to do it sometime. And that's why Omaha Steaks are the perfect holiday gift, because they're not going to return it. It's not going to be the wrong size. It's not going to be the wrong color. And they're going to eat it, especially if they get hungry enough. So, folks, right now, if you go to omahasteaks.com and enter JCE into the search bar for the perfect gift package, guess what you're going to get? 4 bacon-wrapped filet mignons, 4 boneless chicken breasts, 4 Omaha Steaks burgers, 4 gourmet jumbo franks, 4 individual scalloped potatoes, 4 caramel apple tartlets, 1 jar of signature steak seasoning. And if you go to omahasteaks.com and use the keyword JCE in the search bar, 8 more free Omaha Steaks burgers, all in this giant package, and all for only $99.99. You can save over 50% on this package, regular price, and get 8 free burgers on top of that. omahasteaks.com, keyword JCE in the search bar. Holy mackerel, your lips will smack your brains out, and everyone will thank you because you will contribute to their holiday weight gain. Well, the next match on the program, and this didn't take long, and the review is not going to take long, Wardlow beat Matt Sydal. And pretty quick fashion, powerbomb, boom. But then the same shit. Spears comes in afterwards and beats him up with a chair. Not Wardlow, beats the poor Sydal up with a chair, and then gets the microphone and is talking to Wardlow like a stooge. So already, here, Wardlow. They've been on the air for a little over 2 years, right? Wardlow debuted a long time ago with MJF as his bodyguard / stooge, whatever, right? And easily over a year and a half ago. Within the first few weeks, they teased dissension between them, which we made fun of. Then they stopped teasing that, and they never had any more dissension until this past summer, and then they started with the dissension again. But as Wardlow, taking him as a talent, he was brought in as MJF's bodyguard and muscle, and the only time he would wrestle was in multiple man matches where he would neither get the victory nor be defeated, but he'd get a big man spot with the other big guys in AEW because, of course, get the big men together. They just forgot about the part where he should beat people in dominant fashion weeks in a row over and over again to establish that he's a big fucking dangerous monster. They did all that other shit first, and now 2 years later, he's beating people in quick fashion over and over. Is this like Japan where they read the book from back to front instead of front to back? When I'd get the Japanese Gong magazine, the wrestling magazine, it screwed me up for a while. I'm like, what the fuck? And then in Japan, and my mother got a kick out of it. She was just tickled. You look at the cover of the magazine, the spine is on the right-hand side. And you open the cover to the right and you read to the back of the book in that fashion. That's Wardlow's AEW career. I'm glad he's finally picking up those pesky wins that he could have started out with. But anyway, he beats this guy, gets talked to like a stooge. As I said, every time they do this, it's stepping on Wardlow's victory when Spears comes in and beats the guy up with a chair. But I guess now they're going to continue to do this until finally Wardlow snatches the chair out of his hand or says, hey, quit stealing my fucking spotlight or something. Who knows? Did you get anything out of this?
I love what they're doing with Wardlow in the matches. The Shawn Spears thing is what ruins it. And again, this is where you have the seriousness of Wardlow getting over, just squashing people. And then Spears is goofy. He's dressed like Jason in ECW. He's got a chair because he's the chairman.
I forgot about old Jason with the suit and no shirt.
He loves chairs, so he's always using the chair. He's talking down to Wardlow. I get it. Eventually, they're going to turn Wardlow babyface. They've been teasing the thing with him and MJF for a long time now. But it should mean something, and it won't mean as much if you have a goofy comedy guy like Spears, who means nothing from day one in AEW. He's just a guy on the roster. Why is he doing this with Wardlow? Let someone else do it. I know he's in the Pinnacle, but replace him in the fucking Pinnacle. Do whatever you got to do. Nobody cares about Shawn Spears, and I thought that took this down. The match I liked, the fans getting ready for the powerbomb and getting into it, but the Spears stuff is stupid.
The Pinnacle or the Pinnacle? The Malakai Black video, I like their locations and their props, and there's a talented editor behind this. He does the voiceover with his spookiness. What did you get out of the verbal content of this video, besides the fact that he's now got a hooded stooge that he's put the House of Black necklace on, and the fucking guy? What is it with black vomit in wrestling now? But is this flowery verbiage going by so quickly that it's going past most people's fucking heads?
I don't know what.
Or is it talking in too many circles? Is there no point to come to this? It's a tease of something it's a tease of a point that never gets hammered home somehow.
To me, and he has such a soothing voice. To me, this is perfect for masterpiece theater. But I don't like this kind of shit on wrestling because nobody talks like that. Nobody does that. And the rumor is, and I don't know if it's true, and I don't know if you worked with the guy because I'm not too familiar with him, AEW just signed a wrestler named Brody King, and the rumor is that's who Malakai's associate will be.
I've never met the man, so I don't know anything about him. We shall see.
So is Malakai... I mean, is he bringing in a guy to feud with the Varsity Blondes over what he did to Julia Hart?
No, I think he's just going to beat up Griff Garrison next week.
Did we get an update on Julia Hart's condition?
Oh, that comes here in a minute.
Okay.
Anyway, you'll be happy to know, Brian, that I watched the Hikaru Shida match against Serena Deeb. Aren't you happy?
Well, you're obviously happy for yourself.
Can I hear something like that?
Well, you're happy for yourself. I must admit, I'm curious to hear what you're going to have to say about the match. But I was really tired that night. And I fell asleep in the middle of the match. When I rejoined a little while later and watched the rest of the show, I meant to go back and watch that match, and I didn't. So,
son of a bitch, wouldn't you know who won the pony? You rake me over the coals for not watching these girls' matches, and then when I watch them, invariably, that's the one you missed.
I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't ask for a character reference. I will say that, and again, this match, they started off hot and fighting because immediately Serena jumped on Shida before she even got in the ring, and then Shida swung her kendo stick back, and they just started fighting. And I thought, how are they going to follow Paige and Danielson? Well, nobody's going to follow Paige and Danielson. But Serena Deeb is incredible. Great basics, timing, wrestles like a competition, not a performance. She looks like an athlete. And we mentioned not only has she worked with all the top talent, she had the WWE run. She was trained in OVW. Rip Rogers, again, the magic that he works with people having an understanding of wrestling. But at the same time, she's being penalized. Like Arn Anderson used to be the guy to drop the fall for the Horseman most of the time because, Arn's a great worker. You can always beat a great worker. They can keep their heat. But that's if you get them over to begin with. Serena is doing enough jobs that they're going to nullify her benefit to the company, which is she's not only a great in-ring wrestler, but she's also she's been a trainer before. And she's been in that position, and she could help all these girls. But at the same time, you've got to give her credibility with at least some series of wins, or elsewise, then you're just putting the best women's wrestler on the roster out there and beating her every fucking week. But anyway, she did the modified Bret Hart figure 4 around the post. This went through a break, but it wasn't nearly as bad as most AEW women's matches. And Shida kept up. If she could work with somebody like Serena regularly, on a more regular basis, I'm not just saying Serena, but other people like Serena, veterans, experienced, her basics would improve and she would learn just like all the other girls would. But as I said, especially if they don't take care of Serena's, aura, there's not enough Serena to go around. But having said that, Shida is certainly much better than Riho or Freddie Mercury or the rest of them they found. But this was a Serena Deeb show until she pulls off the turnbuckle pad. But there was still a pad on the buckle underneath the fucking pad. Did you see that? No, you didn't see it because you fucking went to sleep. She pulls the turnbuckle pad off, Serena the heel, like she's going to run Shida into it, but there was a smaller pad. I've never seen a turnbuckle with two pads. So they did a finish where Serena got kicked into what was supposed to be the exposed turnbuckle, but there was a little pad on the fucking buckle. So they went back and forth, and then finally Serena gets kicked off into the buckle. She goes head first and gets pinned 1, 2, 3. So again, it's kind of insulting not only to have this girl come and teach these girls on the job, but then have to put them over too. But anyway.
The Arn Anderson comparison is really interesting because I think that's correct. I was a big fan of Arn. And after a while, Arn didn't really win matches.
Yeah.
But you still love him. And we've seen Serena Deeb. We've even seen her with a belt.
But they got him over first. He won a ton of matches first, and then you had the funds in his account to have him do some jobs. Go ahead.
But we've seen Serena Deeb in various matches, including matches where she wore a belt, the NWA belt, but it feels like she never wins. And again, her, Thunder Rosa, there are a few people there. They have their shit down better. And like you said, Shida needs to work more with someone like that.
They're professionals.
They're professionals.
They're professionals, and they just carry themselves different. They have a different aura, and they go about things a different way. And it's not just running and springing and jumping like they've learned on their trampoline. Anyway, now you talked about the Blondes, and what are they going to do about Julia?
Yeah, so I missed this too. Yeah.
Oh, boy, howdy. Tony Schiavone's in the back with Griff and Pillman Jr. No Julia. Obviously, she's been injured. And Griff started. And Griff recited some very bad high school drama class lines in a passionless way, in a way that nobody would talk if they were really mad, except if he's just a big fucking pussy. And since he does look like Pippi Longstocking at a sex change operation, there's potentially that. But this was fucking bad. And he said, and next week, Malakai Black, and Pillman jumps in and is like, no, hold on. That's what he wants you to do. Because apparently they've told him, say, that's what he wants you to do. He wants you to fight him. Don't give him what he wants. But Griff turns around and now he's arguing with Pillman. What are you on his side? Well, look what he did to Julia. And he shoves Pillman, and Pillman backs up like, whoa, dude. I don't know whether Griff lost himself and thought that he was supposed to be arguing with his partner or whatever, but this was it was in no way believable. And Griff just looks preposterous with that fucking hair. And he is not experienced enough yet or a good enough speaker on television to carry something like this off. And I'm starting to think that they're doing these backstage pre-tapes, as I call them, live, because nobody would fucking air these things. If they weren't live, they'd shoot it again, one would think. So they must be doing these live. That's what happened there. So next week, it's going to be Griff against Malakai Black. And Griff says he's going to break Malakai Black's jaw. And I wouldn't hold my breath for that. And then,
for the record, wasn't Pippi Longstocking a redhead?
I don't know. I just remember the fucking pigtails. Eddie Kingston did a promo about Friday night's 10-man tag that we refused to watch because, what happened to his push and everything. Anyway, here we come, the main event segment of the evening. The finals of the Dynamite Diamond Ring Battle Royal from last week. MJF and Dante Martin were the last two. And now they're going to meet in a singles match to determine who gets the diamond ring. But MJF comes out and cuts the promo first. He's in Texas. And so his first line, this place is a goddamn dump. And then Texas, your daughter swallows. Holy shit. But this is why the announcer shouldn't cuss. And this is why every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the card shouldn't cuss. Because that way the top heel can come out and do it. And it's not fucking repetitive gratuitousness, but rather you get mad at that guy. And he does a promo on Punk and talked about his streak of wins over job guys, which makes you the new Ryback. That was fucking classic.
That was good.
And said that Dante, then he segued into Dante Martin and said Dante has the charisma and verbal ability of Helen Keller on Quaaludes, which was a wonderful picture. And then here we go. Here comes Dante moping his way out. If Dante was on Beale Street in Memphis in the 50s with Sputnik Monroe, he would have been arrested and sentenced to jail for mopery because he just mopes. He's a great athlete, amazing athlete. And did you see the forward into the reverse leapfrog? Like everybody does a forward leapfrog, and Snuka and some of those guys used to do the backward leapfrog.
Yeah.
But Dante did a forward into a backward. He started forward and spun in midair and landed looking back behind him. Amazing athlete. Greener than a pepper tree, and this match showed it. And they shouldn't have given him this long. I know they're trying to push the fucking kid, and he should be pushed. Maybe not right now, but he's definitely a keeper for the future and a project. But when they give him this long on national television, especially with a match we've just seen previously, it doesn't get him over. It exposes his weaknesses. Get him in and get him out in 7 or 8 minutes where you can just do the things he can do. And MJF was trying to let him, because MJF was going over, so he wanted to be not a prick. He was trying to give him every opportunity, but my God, did you see not far into the match, Dante comes out of the corner with a forward roll as MJF is laying there, and instead of that whole forward roll into a thing is just extra bullshit, but he jumped up in the air and did a forward somersault and was trying to land with a splash and landed with a knee drop on MJF's jaw and throat. And I got hot as soon as I saw it. And MJF, I'm sure he felt it. It apparently didn't hurt him as bad as I was afraid it did when I saw it. But he rolled out and rolled out again, rolled back in and rolled out again, like he was saying, fuck it. Let me get my shit together and let this fucking goof calm down a little bit. And then they go ahead.
He's so good. I didn't watch it back, but I thought when I was watching it, I think he got him in the face. MJF is so good at selling, I wasn't certain what happened. That's how good he was.
Yeah, well, if he had been 6 inches to the left, Dante, he would have brought his knee down right on MJF's face and nose from several feet in the air. But as it was, his knee landed on MJF's neck, which could have been bad, but maybe enough of his collarbone got it, and MJF selling his jaw, but that wasn't what he was supposed to do. And so they went to the heat spot, which was MJF shoving Dante off the top rope onto the floor to start the heat. And they go to the break and they come back, and Dante, he has no physique. He has no fire to his facials or to his body language. A monotone face. I mean, Gargano looks like a goddamn silent movie actor compared to fucking Dante. He hit multiple dives. MJF would keep rolling out and Dante'd do another dive. And finally, he did a springboard backflip off the top rope to MJF on the floor and went completely over his head. And MJF caught like Dante's right foot on the way by and grabbed it and went down with it. But Dante did a backflip off the top rope and landed face first on the floor and hopped right up. And MJF is the one that was selling it. And the announcer said, oh, wait, Dante caught him with his right knee. No, he didn't. That's why they didn't replay it. And I'm not trying to knock fucking Dante. This is not fair to a guy like Dante Martin, who I said is a tremendous prospect and what an athlete, but there is no way that he's ready for national TV doing anything except his gymnastics. And he was off on some of those. This is where there needs to be a middle ground between the indies and national television, between science and superstition. Because he's not ready. The 10 punches in the corner, he gets MJF in the back, and he was throwing punches to MJF's left shoulder vicinity, supposedly hitting him in the head or face or whatever. And it was so bad that the director, for one split second, took a shot from the side of his fist and, oh shit, and went to the other side. He couldn't take a shot of it. This kid has to work on personality, facials, basics, get in the gym, age a couple of years. They're going to shove him before he's ready to do anything but this flipping stuff, and he's going to be pigeonholed as a sloppy, flippy guy. And then finally, Dante hits the springboard double jump moonsault that he does. Barely. MJF was standing there, but Dante almost went right past him, and MJF had to get under it. And then suddenly, Ricky Starks appears at ringside and puts MJF's leg on the ropes out of nowhere and breaks up the count. And then Dante gets up and acknowledges the presence of Starks and turns around to go pick up MJF, and MJF just gets the fucking Fujiwara armbar on him, and Dante taps out. So, not a good match, rotten finish, and MJF should not need interference from somebody that's not even related to him to beat Dante Martin. Why didn't he use the Dynamite diamond ring that he already has, much less his new one he's about to win? Knock him goofy and beat him with a headlock takeover. That would have made sense with his interview. That would have made sense with what he did with Darby. And that would have put some heat on MJF. As it was, out of nowhere, Stark shows up, involves himself, leaves, and then MJF just takes the guy down and taps him out. Fuck. Before we talk about the afterbirth, what'd you think?
I thought it was all right. You know, this is where I'm glad that they started the show with the 60-minute draw match, because I feel like seeing the rest of the show, you kind of had to. And this match had to be far away from that so that hopefully you got a little bit of the crowd back. It looked like you had a really excited, overzealous kid doing a lot of stuff that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I think MJF did all he could. I think MJF's a young ring general in there, but
yeah.
You had a guy, if you don't know where he's going to land, there's only so much you could do. The spot where he hit MJF in the face, I thought he got him hard. I wasn't certain. There were several dives where I thought because it wasn't at MJF had to move in an unnatural way from where he was. I was afraid he was going to tear his knee or something.
Yeah.
On one of those. Dante has a lot of potential, but this is one of the problems. He has a lot of potential, but AEW doesn't have too many places to send him other than onto TV. But there are people there who show enough that, like you said, facial expressions. He hasn't learned that on the indies. He's young. He hasn't been on the indies forever. He didn't learn that on the indies. How's he going to learn it now? So, you know, there probably needs to be a system where you do take some of these guys off TV for at least 6 months and just learn the basics, reinforce the basics, the Rip Rogers course, whatever you want to call it.
If he got in the gym, Dante, and got a little bit more weight on his body, he'd be great in a mask. Because you cover that face up with something more attractive, I guess is the only way to say it. Remember, Jerry Stubbs was great as Mr. Olympia.
Tremendous as Mr. Olympia, yeah.
As Jerry Stubbs, he was pea-head and bald. But, you know,
I'm not saying Dante Martin needs to wear a mask.
I am. Cover that fucking face up, because that face it's droopy. He's not excited, not happy, not mad, not anything. He's confused. It's a confused looking face. It has to be the whole package. If you've got, remember that, what was her name? Susan Boyle, that won that singing competition. She looked like a mud fence and sang like a goddamn opera star, and it didn't fit, right? And part of the reason why that she won was because it didn't fit. You wouldn't think that that voice was coming out of it. Well, if you've got a guy with that athletic ability, but absolutely no personality in his face until he gets older and gets some, put a cool looking mask on him and make him the kid's hero that does all the flying and acrobatics and everything. And he's got a cool outfit for the kids and keep it short and let him learn. I don't know. But anyway, the afterbirth. So FTR come out to the ring to celebrate with MJF because they are part of the Pinnacle whenever it suits the storyline. Even though Wardlow and Spears didn't come out, and there's no Tully, but FTR came out to pick MJF up and celebrate in the ring so that we could have a blackout. And after what happened last week, everybody was thinking, well, this is the Briscoes. But no. The lights come back on, and it's Sting and Darby. And they have a big fight, and finally the numbers advantage takes over, and the heels are kicking the shit out of them, and then suddenly, like Mussolini! With a baseball bat. Here comes Punk with a baseball bat, and the heels powder. And Punk grabs the microphone and challenges for a 6-man tag, which I am looking forward to. FTR and MJF against Darby, Sting, and Punk next week. And because I was afraid they were teasing that Sting and Tully were actually going to be getting at it. But that'll be a good 6-man and a nice ratings thing. Of course, I sense FTR getting a shit kicked out of them again. But did you see Punk's T-shirt?
You talking about the T-shirt for women's rights?
Yes.
Or women's health? What am I supposed to say?
Women, well, basically
reproductive rights.
Common sense.
Yes.
And medicine over superstition. We could just say it like that. He's in Texas. I used to live there. I have friends in Texas. I love many of the places and things in Texas, but there's a lot of fucking redneck Republican assholes. And that's where they're starting the groundswell of trying to deny women across the country their reproductive rights on behalf of an invisible, fictitious supreme being. So Punk hits the ring in Texas to make the babyface save and challenge for next week wearing a T-shirt with a diagram of the fallopian tubes or whatever. And the thing says, you get your own and then tell it what to do. And I have to think, and let's face it, the AEW crowd, one thing you can say, it's a younger crowd, so they're probably all predominantly, I won't say pro-choice and pro-life, I will say pro-medicine and anti-medicine. They're probably all pro-medicine. But I have to I just love the finger to the general Texas society that feels like we should all be living back in the fucking dark ages. So that was a nice little thing to see on the way out. Now, having said all that, what were the ratings on this program from Wednesday night, and what part of Page and Danielson was the highest viewed segment?
I'll have to get you the quarterly breakdowns, but I can tell you the overall rating was 948,000 viewers, up from the previous week, which was 872,000 viewers.
It's a match I honestly thought they'd crack 1 million. It's a match they've been promoting. It was anticipated. If I were them, I think for one of the holiday weekends on Rampage, why don't they just show the whole goddamn match over again instead of the bogus cosplayers on Friday night that they've been giving us? Everybody should see that match. That would do more to get AEW over with wrestling fans that don't watch wrestling anymore than anything else they could do or anybody they could sign. If you just, hey, you don't watch wrestling anymore because it's all fucking and horse shit, watch this. We do this over here. That would get some more lapsed fans to watch AEW because you don't see wrestling anymore on television.
Okay, have the quarterly break.
But anyway, the quarterlies, and again, I would have figured it would have been over 1 million, but I heard that one of the quarters for Page and Danielson was. Go ahead.
The first quarter, obviously the first 4 quarters are this match. The first quarter did 947,000 viewers. The second quarter did 963,000 viewers. The third quarter went to 943,000 viewers. And the fourth quarter was at 1,035,000 viewers. So there's the first hour of the show.
And you know what? That makes it doesn't make sense why anybody would have stopped watching this match in the third quarter. I can't see if you're watching a wrestling program why you would change channel on this match, but it does make sense in that for those with short attention spans, it was building for the first 2 quarters. Then they realized about the time we all did, they're going an hour. So they tuned out for a little while and then more of them came back for the finish.
Coming out of that, the fifth quarter, which I believe was still Danielson Page, and then that led into the Bucks promo and the Wardlow match, was still at 1,035,000. The sixth quarter, so now that match is off the books.
But I was about to say, now we've seen the Hardley Boys. Where are we going from here?
855,000.
Wow!
Then the next quarter, 873,000. And the final quarter, I believe this is the final quarter, MJF versus Dante Martin, 936,000. So it went back up for that match.
So basically, there were 1 million people watching until the Hardley Boys popped up and they ran 150,000 off. But then after the next 15 minutes or so, people said, well, they're not wrestling, so we're safe. We can go back. And they went back for MJF.
See, that's my point, too. And it's not even about harping on the Young Bucks and what we think about them. That's well established. To put any comedy segment or anything goofy after that match, to me, is a major turnoff. That was the moment. You had to figure the audience was going to probably grow throughout the match, peaking at the end. That's when the next thing you show is Punk, or someone you know people are going to be looking forward to see throughout the rest of the show. Instead, they went to interstitial comedy. They went to a little bit, and then the rest of the show just moved on. That was the point. Let's hook people for the rest of the show. And they didn't. In my eyes, they didn't.
Well, apparently in Nielsen's eyes, they didn't either. But there you have it. That's what happened.